All right, time now for Bottom Line. We're going to look at the sectors and companies worth watching this morning, and today the focus on retail. So late Friday, JCPenney files for Chapter 11, and not the only name in trouble. Well, joining me now is Simon Freakley, AlixPartners CEO. AlixPartners is a global consulting firm serving Fortune 500 companies with expertise in restructuring and works with companies like JCPenney. Basically, if you're going to call a guy to help you restructure, you're going to call Simon. So great to chat with you. I know you can't talk specifically about JCPenney, but can you give me an insight into what the world of retail restructuring is looking like right now?
So, Alix, thanks so much for having me back. Obviously, Penny and J. Crew are in the headlines, but generally in retail, it's just a terrible situation. There are some winners, but there are lots of losers. Winners, of course, tend to be the online providers, particularly those servicing people's needs. Grocery, pets, by the way, are being very well looked after, DIY. So Amazon, Walmart, Target, Peloton's crushing it. But there are real losers. If you think that in April, apparel sales in the U.S., Alix, dropped by almost 90%. And of course, that's just one of the headlines. Any store-based business, particularly department stores, are having a terrible time. And online is mixed, honestly. Those businesses that have omni-channel strategies, which should be quite well set up, might see their revenues holding, or even in some cases, like Amazon and Walmart, going up. But of course, the marginal cost of servicing the fulfillment of online sales is higher than that in stores. And so whilst revenues may hold or go up, operating profits will go down. We've seen a couple of people warn of that. So it's a mixed bag, but there's blood on Main Street, and Q2 is going to show some real problems.
How quickly do you think that these companies are going to, those that do have to wind up declaring Chapter 11, how quickly they can go through restructuring?
Well, I think that it can be done pretty quickly, of course, but it's not just the financial restructuring that has to be thought about and the liquidity and financing that goes with that. People have to think about what their restart strategy will be when they can reopen post-pandemic, and of course that's now happening in certain states across the U.S. What is their restart strategy? How can they learn from their customers' behavior over the past 8 or 10 weeks for things like curbside pickup? So the restructuring itself, Alix, can be done fairly quickly. It's the restart plan that people have to focus on once they've got through the immediate liquidity needs. And the truth is that for retailers, they are generally data-rich, but insight poor. And so what every retailer has to do, and particularly those that are going through restructuring, is learn from the customer behaviors as they put their restart plan into place.
Which calls into question all the retail space and sort of the liquidation risk of just, here's the mall, here's my space in a mall, no way I'm going to use it, it's just going to be a fire sale.
Great point, Alix. And I think if you bear in mind that the U.S. has more retail square footage per capita than anywhere else in the world, we are overstored in the U.S. And so coming out of this, we're undoubtedly going to see a drop in retail square footage. Back to the restructuring point, what most retailers have done is simply not pay their rent in April or indeed May, because the conservation of liquidity has been the absolute priority. But our view is that coming out of the pandemic, we might see even as much as a 20% drop in the retail square footage per capita in the U.S.
I wonder what the trickle-down effect of that is. For example, and I'll use JCPenney as an example, but you can make the argument for Target or Macy's too, that sometimes stores, the smaller stores, want to be near one of the big box retailers and say, okay, well, I'm only here because Macy's is there or JCPenney's is there. What's going to be sort of the second to third round effects of this?
Well, I think we're going to see a profound effect, Alix, across the entire retail sector. But back to this point about learning from customer preferences, I do think there's some learning for every retailer and how people have behaved in the last 8 or 10 weeks. I mentioned curbside pickup, but what are their new models? How will they adapt to changed customer behavior coming out of the pandemic? What we've seen, of course, is a massive swing to online purchases, particularly of the essentials like grocery. Will people ever move back? And the truth is that many of them won't. And so there's been a permanent shift to online, and maybe even a permanent shift to things like curbside pickup. So the people who will survive this and ultimately thrive will learn from that changed customer behavior, whether that's the smaller stores near the big malls or just the standalone independents in Main Street. There's some real learning to come out of this.
When we as we go through this, do you see restructurings that then really push those that survive into the more digital and curbside pickup, or do you see it moving into more M&A? Which is more likely?
Well, the one thing to take away from this time, Alex, for all of us, is that the move to online is permanent, that people have been making the purchases online they've never made before. And, of course, what Amazon has shown, but others who have a decent fulfillment capability like Walmart, is once you've cracked it, it's very easy to do. So the learning here is that there's a permanent shift. But also, to your second point, there will be consolidation in the sector because there will be winners and losers. Consolidation will happen, flights to safety, opportunistic purchases, which will drive M&A. And we're already seeing the early signs of M&A activity driven by that. But one thing is for sure, there will be people that thrive coming out of this with the right restart strategy. And candidly, most of the work that we're doing at AlixPartners today is not actually the formal restructuring work. It's preparing our clients for the restart. And those on the front foot, those that use their data to get insights, those that learn from the customer behavior over the last 8 to 10 weeks will be the winners coming out of it.
What does that wind up meaning for operating margins going forward?
Well, as I mentioned, the cost of fulfillment of the marginal sale online is greater than that in the store. And so as people understand that with a permanent switch, I think, a center of gravity moving to online, is people will have to evolve their operating models. So a shrinking of in-store capability and expansion of online capability, people really making sure they've got their fulfillment processes down to a T, that they've got their delivery capabilities properly put in place, and people will therefore have to manage their margins accordingly. So I think this curation of a better online platform, that means that with that in place, they can protect their margins going forward.
How quickly can companies do something like this?
Well, very quickly. I mean, what we've been, obviously with our sleeves rolled up working with clients over the last 2 or 3 months, is that the best people have moved extremely quickly. I mean, the early stages of the crisis were about preserving liquidity, working out what, if any, sales could be achieved if they had a largely in-store strategy. But the best of class retailers have very swiftly moved into the playbook for how they restart their businesses post-pandemic. And as we've seen in those states that have already opened up, people are fed up of staying at home. So people are getting out and people are going to malls, but not in the numbers that they were. So people with proactive strategies in terms of promotions and incentives are being smart at capturing those customer dollars as states are reopening, being on the front foot, are actually quite well prepared. So having survived the initial liquidity challenges, as many retailers have, is the real battlefield is going to be around the restart.
Really wonderful conversation, exactly what we wanted to get to as we're going through this. Thank you very much, Simon Freakley, AlixPartners CEO. Thank you.